The city never noticed her, not when she begged, not when she sang, not even when she vanished from school, like a paper caught in the wind. Amira was 12 years old, barefoot, and mostly invisible. She lived in the cracked shadow of Lagos Island, near the rusting fence of the old Ajegunle rail tracks, where tin roofs leaked and the gutters coughed. Her days were spent carrying crates for traders, dodging insults, and pretending hunger didn't hurt. But when the night came, when the markets shut, and the city's chaos went to sleep, Mira sang. Not loudly, just soft enough for the moon to hear, a song without words, stitched together from memories of a mother's lullaby, of quiet dreams, and wounds too old to bleed. People said her voice wasn't normal, old. Mamas who sold fish would pause and whisper prayers. Tired conductors would go quiet, pretending dust had gotten in their eyes. Even stray dogs would settle near her, as if her song meant safety. But none of them really saw her, because nobody really looks at orphans who sleep behind broken kiosks. Especially not one like Amra, dirt under her nails, threadbare gown stained, with gari and eyes too big for her tiny, starved face. On the other side of the city, behind tall white walls and glass towers, a man lay dying. Mr. Malik Okonkwo, aged 64, real estate mogul, founder of MNO Estates, rumored to be worth $47 billion. He hadn't spoken in 6 days. Doctors had labeled it neurological withdrawal, but everyone in the hospital knew the truth. Since his only son had died in a car crash last year and his wife followed shortly after from grief, Malik had simply stopped wanting to live. He refused treatment, refused visitors, even food was left untouched. He had made peace with the end, or so they thought. "He's fading," whispered a nurse at Silvershore Memorial Hospital, glancing through the ICU glass. Heart rate still low, blood pressure unstable. "He hasn't blinked in hours," one doctor sighed. "Nothing more we can do. His body's alive, his will isn't." No one in the hospital that night knew that, outside, in the shadows of the parking lot, someone very small and very quiet had slipped through the gate. Amira hadn't come to the hospital for a miracle. She had come because she hadn't eaten since the morning, and someone told her rich people sometimes give their leftovers to beggars outside the private hospitals. Her stomach growled as she clutched her torn plastic bag with 2 wrappers and a bottle cap she used as a cup. A security guard had shooed her away once, but it had started raining, and she'd hidden behind a generator shed, soaking wet, hoping someone would bring rice in a takeaway plate. Instead, she heard something. "He's just waiting to die." The voice came from 2 nurses, standing under the reception awning. "Lost everything," one whispered. "Wife, son, purpose. Money doesn't matter now. Some people aren't dying of illness," the other murmured. "They're dying of silence." Amira's ears twitched. She didn't understand everything, but she recognized the word silent like a secret. That's how she felt every day, like a silent space nobody noticed. And then something tugged at her heart. A memory, a dream, a man lying on a bed with tubes in his chest, and her voice soft, barely there, bringing him back. She didn't even remember the full dream, only the warmth it left in her chest. Maybe that's why her feet began to move. "Stop." A nurse turned sharply as the small girl entered the white-tiled hallway. "Who are you? This is private property." "I'm sorry," Amira said quickly, "but I heard what you said about the man, the one waiting to die." The nurse squinted. "Why does that matter to you? I can help." The second nurse rolled her eyes. "Help you? How?" "I'll sing for him." Silence, then laughter. "You think your street songs can fix a dying millionaire?" But the first nurse looked again, closer this time. She saw something in Amira's face. Not defiance, not fear, just this gentle certainty. The kind that doesn't shout because it doesn't need to. "What harm can it do?" The nurse said, almost to herself. "He's already dying. Let her try." So, barefoot and dripping rainwater, Amira walked into the hospital's most guarded room. The glass doors slid shut behind her. Machines beeped steadily. The air smelled like alcohol and goodbye. Mr. Malik lay like a statue carved from wax, unmoving. Amira stood by his bed. Her fingers touched the cold metal rail. And then, she closed her eyes. She began to hum. No lyrics, no grand melody, just soft notes from deep inside her. A sound like wind rustling through a memory. A song that didn't try to wake him, let him know he wasn't alone. At first, nothing happened. But then, the air in the room shifted. A nurse standing at the door stepped back. The monitor showed a flicker. Another flicker. Malik's finger twitched. Amira didn't stop. She hummed a little louder, notes floating like feathers. The heart rate monitor beeped more steadily now. The doctor rushed in. "What's going on?" His pulse just spiked. The nurse said, Still no words, no movement. Just that tiny girl, in a soaked gown, singing into a storm of silence. And then, Mr. Malik coughed. Mr. Malik coughed. It wasn't loud, more like a whisper forced through dust. But in a room where nothing had changed for 6 days, even the smallest sound was thunder. The doctor froze, stethoscope already halfway to his chest. The heart monitor climbed by a single point, and Amira, still humming, still soaked to her bones, didn't flinch. She simply opened her eyes and kept singing. "His eyes are fluttering," the nurse whispered. Malik's brow twitched. Then his lips parted, dry and cracked. A rasp escaped, the kind of noise that sounds like someone pulling themselves back from the edge of something deep and dark. "Amira," the doctor said suddenly, stepping forward, "what did you just do?" "I didn't do anything," she whispered back. "I just remembered my song." Across the city, in a high-rise suite at the Palace Heights Hotel, Farouk Okonkwo, Mr. Malik's only nephew and acting chairman of M&O Estates, stared at the hospital notification. On his tablet, patient number 227, condition, slight improvement, vital activity detected. His smile vanished. "That's not possible," he muttered. Just last week, he'd told the board Malik wouldn't survive. He'd already begun the paperwork to transfer 38% of the company's shares. Lawyers had prepped a revised will. A funeral suit hung ready in his closet. This man was not supposed to get better. Find out what changed. He barked at his assistant. Tonight, back at Silver Shore Memorial, the word had begun to spread. A guard told a janitor. A nurse whispered to a security supervisor. The supervisor told the admin desk. By morning, a quiet story began to hum through the hospital walls. Like Amira's song had the night before, the billionaire coughed. A street girl made it happen. People began peeking into Mr. Malik's room under fake excuses. Lab techs brought forms to sign that didn't need his signature. An old ward matron came to check the AC, though it had been working fine. For weeks they didn't speak to Amira. They didn't offer her food or clothes, but they watched, because somehow, she had done what machines and money COULDN single quotes T. Later that morning, the hospital director called an emergency meeting. "We need to know who this girl is," she said. "She didn't come with any patient. She's not in our visitor log. She's homeless," one of the nurses said gently. "Her name's Amira. She sleeps near the railway line. I've seen her before. She sings sometimes near the old underpass. And no family." The nurse shook her head. "No one. Not that we know of." The director's fingers tapped the table. "Find her, feed her, get her cleaned up, and, for God's sake, don't let her leave." Amira didn't know any of that was happening. She was sitting quietly beside Mr. Malik's bed, her hands folded in her lap. Her gown had dried into a stiff second skin. Her stomach grumbled every few minutes. She ignored it. This was the closest she'd ever sat to real, clean silence. Malik hadn't spoken again since the cough. But something had changed. His fingers twitched more often. His chest rose in steadier rhythm. And sometimes, Amira felt like he could hear her, even when his eyes were shut. So she sang again, twice, 3 times, until a soft knock came at the glass door. The hospital director stepped in, carrying a small tray. "I brought you breakfast," she said gently, setting it beside Amira. "It's from the staff cafeteria." Amira blinked, uncertain. No one had ever given her food this politely, not even in church outreaches. Usually they just pointed at a bucket and said, "Pick one." "Thank you," she said quietly. The director sat beside her. "Did you know Mr. Malik before last night?" Amira shook her head. "Then why did you come in here?" Amira thought for a long moment, then answered, "Because I saw a man who looked like he'd forgotten how to come back, and I had a song I dreamed could help." The director stared at her, not sure whether she was talking about sleep or something deeper then. She reached into her bag and handed Amira a folded bundle. "A clean gown and slippers. We'll get you bathed and fed. And maybe later, you can sing again." Amira smiled for the first time. It was the kind of smile that made people believe in impossible things. Farouk Okonkwo stormed into his father's house that afternoon. "Uncle Malik is improving. Baba, did you hear that?" His father, sitting on a recliner, barely looked up. "You should be happy, son." Family healing is God's mercy. Farouk paced the rug. Mercy doesn't rewrite wills. If he regains full consciousness, then you'll lose your shortcut to power. Farouk spun around. You taught me to win. I taught you to build, not betray. There's a difference. Farouk narrowed his eyes. If that street girl ruins everything, I swear I'll be careful what you swear. His father cut in. God may be listening, and so may your uncle. That night, Amira was given a real bed. A nurse tucked her into a quiet room near the maternity wing, far from the buzz of the ICU. She stared at the clean sheets, like they were made of gold, but she couldn't sleep. Her ears strained against the silence. She missed the buzz of flies, the clatter of buses, the wet hiss of rain on tarpaulin. Mostly, she missed his breathing at 3:47 a.m. She slipped out of bed and tiptoed back toward Mr. Mollick's room. The halls were quiet, nurses asleep at their desks. When she opened the glass door, she saw his eyes. They were open, and he was watching her. His eyes were open, dark, tired, but full of something alive. Amira froze in the doorway. Her small fingers gripped the frame as if the wind might carry her away. Mr. Malik Okonkwo, the man who hadn't moved in nearly a week, whose name filled newspaper headlines, whose silence had made grown doctors give up, was looking at her. And then, his lips moved. "Who are you?" The words came out thin, like air pressed through dust. But to Amira, they felt like fireworks exploding inside her chest. She stepped closer, slowly, as if afraid a louder breath might break the moment. "My name is Amira," she whispered. He blinked slowly. His throat clicked as he swallowed. "I heard a voice," he said. "It reached somewhere I thought was gone." She nodded. "It was me." He looked at her again, this time longer. "You're the girl from the dream." Amira's eyes widened. "You saw it too?" she asked. He gave a weak smile, small but real. "You sang. There was no light, but your voice felt like sunlight. I followed it." Amira stood by his side, trembling slightly, not from fear, but from the weight of something she didn't understand. Hope, maybe even fate. The next morning, the hospital was chaos. Doctors rushed into Mr. Mollick's room. Machines were recalibrated, tests ordered, oxygen masks checked. He sat upright, though weak, sipping warm water through a straw, eyes quietly following every movement. But when Amira entered, the tension in the room dropped. She sat beside him again. No one stopped her now. "She's the only one he really listens to," one nurse whispered. By noon, the media had caught wind. Breaking: billionaire Malik Okonkwo wakes from coma after 6 days. Social feeds exploded. But buried beneath headlines and hashtags was a smaller rumor. They say it was a street girl, that she sang to him, that she healed him. That whisper raced through Lagos like fire, through dry grass. Meanwhile, in a small compound across the city, Farouk Okonkwo smashed a glass against the wall. "She's a beggar," he hissed. Where did she come from? She must have seen him before. His lawyer offered weekly, or bribed a nurse. "No one sings a man back to life," Farouk snapped. "Unless," he paused, eyes narrowing, "unless this is being staged." That evening, Mr. Malik spoke quietly with the hospital director. "I want to know more about her," he said. "The girl, Amira." "We've tried, sir," the director said gently. "No known family, no school records, just a ghost of the street." Mollick's lips thinned. No child should live as a ghost. He looked at the window as rain began to fall again. "She didn't just wake me up," he said. "She reminded me I was still alive." 3 hours later, a woman in a wrapper arrived at the hospital gate, lips painted too red, voice sharp as nails. "I'm looking for my niece." She snapped at the security guard. "The girl in the video. What's her name?" "Amira," the woman said quickly. "I'm her aunt, her only family." But Amira, inside, heard the voice before the guards even reached her. She dropped the tea she was holding. That voice. It echoed like rot. "And Jumok, 2 years ago." That voice had spat the words that haunted her sleep. "You're cursed, girl. A witch. You survived what killed your mother. You're evil." They'd left her on the roadside that day, just like that. No bags, no goodbye, just dust and silence. Now, she was back, smiling fake tears. "I've been looking for her everywhere," Aunt Jumok wailed. "We were so worried." Amira stepped behind the curtain, eyes burning. She didn't cry, she didn't run, she just stood still. The nurse returned, whispering, "Sir, A woman claims to be her relative. Malik, now sitting in a wheelchair, turned toward the door. Bring her in. Jamoke entered dramatically, wiping her eyes. Sir, thank you for helping my niece. God will bless you. She suffered, but we'll take her now. Malik raised his hand. The room stilled. You left her. Jamoke blinked. She told me everything, he said, voice steel beneath the velvet. You called her a witch. You threw her away. Sir, children lie, especially cursed ones. He rose shakily to his feet. You will not see her again. Guards appeared behind her. She tried to protest. She's my blood. Blood doesn't rot its own, Malik replied. Leave now. As she was escorted out, Jamoke screamed, You'll regret this. She's nothing but street trash. She'll ruin you. But no one listened, because in that room stood a man reborn, and a child finally seen. That night, as the hospital quieted again, Malik and Amira sat in a private lounge. You don't owe me anything, she said softly, hugging a warm blanket. Malik looked at her. I know, he said, but I owe the world one less forgotten child. She blinked. What will happen now? I don't know yet, he said. But if you could be anything, what would you want to be? Amira looked up. Her voice was almost a whisper. Want to learn how to make people feel what I felt when I sang. I want to help people who are sad feel like they can come back to. Malik stared at her, as if watching the sunrise after years of night. Then that's what we'll do. The news broke like lightning. M&O, billionaire wakes from coma. Credits voice of orphan girl. Headlines spread faster than they could be. Verified. Twitter threads, Facebook posts, WhatsApp statusile, carrying the same whisper turned raw. A miracle child saved a dying millionaire, and somewhere buried beneath the likes and retweets, people began asking a new question. Who is she? Not just the girl who sang, but the girl who changed everything. Inside the tall white walls of the Silver Shore estate, Amira was no longer sleeping on cold concrete. She had her own room now, a real bed, soft blankets, a wardrobe with clothes that fit, even slippers without holes. But she didn't smile much, not because she wasn't grateful she was, but because something inside her had shifted. Her voice had once been a shield from pain. Now it was a key, a force. And that scared her. She wasn't just a girl anymore. She was a symbol. Mr. Malik, now recovering faster than anyone predicted, spent long hours with her. They talked, mostly, about things Amira had never spoken aloud. The street, the hunger, the fear of being called cursed, the dreams she used to have about flying. He listened, eyes soft and unreadable. You want to fly? He asked one afternoon. Not planes, she said, just above the world, even if it's just for a minute. By the third week of her stay, the announcement shocked the country. Maliko Konko adopts former homeless girl, calls her the one who saved me. TV anchors debated the move. Social media exploded with hashtags like hashtag from street to silk and hashtag voice of Amira. Some called it beautiful, others called it madness. But far away, in a private boardroom at M&O headquarters, one man clenched his jaw as he stared at the TV screen. Farouk Okonkwo. He's gone insane, he muttered. His assistant looked nervous. Sir, the board's reaction has been ... mixed. Farouk stood, pacing. My uncle was supposed to die, he snapped. I was next. It was done. Now this child, this street, things being groomed like heir to the empire. His eyes narrowed. She's not staying, not if I can help it. Amira didn't know about Farouk. She didn't know he was watching, didn't know that in dusty back rooms plans were being written in whispers and signatures. All she knew was that for the first time in years, she was being called by her name. One evening, while Amira sat reading in the garden, a maid brought her a plate of jollof rice and grilled fish. She smiled, thanked her, and almost took a bite. But something was off. She didn't know what, just the smell. It was too sharp, too bitter. Her stomach twisted. She set the plate down and called for Mr. Ibrahim, the estate's head chef. The moment he entered, he froze. He didn't even sniff the plate. He just stared. Who brought you this? He asked urgently. One of the new maids, Amira said. Why? His face hardened. This never came from my kitchen. The plate was rushed to the house. Doctor, traces of pesticide. Enough to kill a child. Malik's rage burned through the house like a wildfire. Staff were questioned. Surveillance cameras reviewed. The maid who delivered the food, gone. Vanished. She had resigned that very night and disappeared. Without a trace, security was tightened. Guards tripled. background checks enforced. But Malik knew what this was. It wasn't a mistake, it was a message. He called Amira into his office that night. The lights were dim. Jazz music hummed low in the background. He stood by the window, holding a letter in one hand and a glass of water in the other. "Come, sit," he said. She obeyed quietly, hands in her lap. He looked at her, long and hard. "There are people," he began, "who would rather see me dead than see you alive in this house." She said nothing. "They think you're nothing but a shadow, a beggar with a borrowed name." "I don't want to be a problem," she whispered. He set the glass down and knelt in front of her. "You're not a problem, Amira. You're a promise. But even promises bleed when betrayal walks through open doors." A week later, during a board meeting at M&O's main tower, Malik collapsed mid-sentence. Paramedics arrived in minutes. He was rushed back to the hospital. Same ICU, same machines, same silence. Only this time, Amira wasn't alone when she held his hand, because standing behind her, with fake smiles and forced pity, was Farouk. "I'll take care of everything," he told the board. "My uncle's health is unstable again. The company needs firm leadership. We can't trust a child to manage what took decades to build." Nobody dared speak. The lawyers arrived the next day, holding a revised will, signed, sealed, and supposedly, witnessed. It stated that Farouk would assume all executive duties and act as full legal guardian of Amira until she turned 21. The signatures matched. The stamp was authentic. The documents impeccable. But Amira knew one thing. Mr. Malik never told her about a new will, and more importantly, he hadn't held a pen since the day he collapsed. Silvershore Mansion no longer felt like home. The walls were colder. The light didn't seem to reach the corners anymore. The staff no longer greeted Amira with warm eyes, only nervous glances and fake politeness. Ever since Mr. Malik was rushed back to the ICU, everything had changed, and Farouk Okonkwo had moved in like a storm with polished shoes. "From now on," he said on his first day as acting guardian, "this house runs under my command." He walked through the mansion like a man who believed he'd already won. His smile was always calculated. His tone always just gentle enough to sound kind but never warm. He removed all Malik's family photos, replaced them with abstract paintings, locked Malik's study, cut half the staff, and he had a new rule. No more singing, especially not from her. "This isn't a choir school," he snapped one evening. "This is a respectable home, not a beggar's theater." Amira had opened her mouth to protest, but his eyes had turned hard, cold. "You should be grateful you still have a roof," he said quietly. "Don't test my generosity." Farouk now attended every board meeting, speaking Malik's name as though it belonged to him. He appeared in interviews, declaring he was honoring his uncle's wishes. When asked about Amira, he smiled too wide and said, "The child is adjusting well. I'll make sure she's educated, appropriately." Behind closed doors, he made it clear, she's just a placeholder, a sympathy story, a girl with a cute voice. That's it. But Farouk didn't know what Amira had learned from the street, how to stay quiet, how to listen through walls, how to watch people and hear lies even when their mouths didn't move. And she had heard everything, especially the late-night call behind his locked office door. "The will is solid," Farouk had whispered. "They can't trace the signature back to anything illegal. The lawyers are mine. The board is loyal. The girl will break soon." Then silence, then laughter, not the joyful kind. The kind people use when they think no one is watching. That night, Amira didn't sleep. She didn't cry. She planned in the morning. She asked the housekeeper for her old bag from the rail tracks, the one with broken zippers and 2 torn wrappers. Inside, hidden beneath scraps of cloth and plastic, was something precious, a tiny audio recorder, battered, worn, still working. She had used it once to record herself singing under the bridge, just to remember what her voice sounded like. Now, she had a new use for it. Over the next 2 days, Amira moved like a shadow. She placed the recorder behind Farouk's bookshelf. She sang softly when no one was home, just to keep her strength. She memorized staff schedules, mapped the corridors, watched who Farouk met, what rooms he locked, and what he said when he thought she wasn't there. On the 3rd night, her patience paid off. He was on the phone again. "I don't care if he wakes up, he's too weak to fight. By the time he understands what's happened, everything will already be mine. And that child, I'll ship her back to whatever gutter she came from." Amira clenched her fists behind the door. Not this time. The next morning, she requested a visit to the hospital. Farouk refused. She doesn't need to see him, he told the doctor. It'll only confuse her. Her presence might disrupt his recovery. But the doctor, one of the few who still had a heart, allowed it. She has every right, he said. Until proven otherwise, she's still his ward. Farouk smiled, tightly of course, but let her go alone. So she did, and when she entered the ICU room, everything she had been holding back came crashing down. Malik lay still. Machines beeped steadily. His hands were pale, his breathing shallow. She sat beside him, took his hand, and finally, after days of silence, she sang, but not like before. This song was stronger, deeper, fierce, like the wind after a storm. They've stolen your voice, tried to steal mine too, but I remember who you are. And you gave me a name. Now come back and speak again. Speak for both of us. And in that moment, his finger twitched. She pressed her lips to his knuckles and whispered, please come back. Baba, he's trying to take everything, but I'll fight, I promise. Later that night, back at the mansion, Amira called the one person Farouk didn't control. Mr. Ebuka, Malik's personal lawyer. Loyal, honest, quiet. She handed him the recorder. You need to hear this. She didn't say anything more. She didn't have to. The next morning, the Silvershore mansion was buzzing. Lawyers, reporters, police officers. Farouk had barely sat down for breakfast when they walked in. At the center stood Amira, wearing a clean white dress, hair brushed neatly, recorder in hand. Behind her stood Mr. Ebuka and two officers in uniform. Farouk stood. What is this? She didn't answer. She just pressed play. By the time he understands what's happened, everything will already be mine, that child. I'll ship her back to whatever gutter she came from. Silence. Then the will is solid. The lawyers are mine. The board is loyal. Farouk's face drained of color. This is nonsense. It's been doctored. She's a child. The lawyer stepped forward. We'll see what the court says. The officer raised his voice. Mr. Farouk Okonkwo, you are under arrest for fraud, attempted embezzlement, and forgery of legal documents. Cameras flashed as Farouk was handcuffed. You'll regret this, he shouted at Amira. This isn't over. But as they dragged him away, Amira didn't flinch. She walked back into the house, quiet, steady, unbreakable. But one thing remained. Mr. Malik was still not awake, and she had one song left to sing. The world had seen the headlines. Fraud exposed. Farouk Okonkwo arrested after orphan girl releases audio evidence. Miracle girl turns hero. Again, stops billionaire's empire from falling. Social media couldn't get enough. But Amira wasn't reading any of it. She didn't care about the likes or hashtags. She was sitting quietly in a hospital room, next to the man who had given her everything, a name, a future, a chance to be more than forgotten. But now he was the one fading. Mr. Malik's condition hadn't improved. The doctors said the stress had weakened him, that even after Farouk's arrest, his blood pressure kept dropping, that his vitals were holding, but barely. He has 48 hours, the doctor said gently, looking at Amira. We've done all we can. She nodded silently, and when the nurse left the room, Amira turned toward the bed. Malik looked peaceful, too peaceful, almost like he was ready to let go. She sat beside him and held his hand. You told me once, she whispered, that I brought you back. Her voice cracked. But maybe you don't remember. You brought me back first. She looked up at the ceiling, blinking back tears. There was a time I didn't want to wake up either. When hunger wasn't the worst part, it was the silence. The way no one saw me. She reached into her pocket and pulled out something small. A butterfly pin. Rusty. Cheap. The only thing her mother had ever given her. I used to hold this and pretend it could fly me somewhere else. Then she leaned forward. And now I need you to fly back to me. And she began to sing. Not softly this time. Not like a ghost whispering into darkness. This song was full. Every word painted with the color of 1,000 memories. You gave me a home when I had none. You gave me a name when the world took mine. Don't leave me where I can't follow. Not yet, not now. We have skies to fly. The room, once heavy with stillness, began to shift. The very air felt warmer, as if the walls had been holding their breath and were now slowly exhaling. Machines beeped steadily, then faster, then stronger. Amira didn't stop. She held his hand tighter and kept singing. Her voice climbed like morning light through closed Windows. And suddenly Mr. Malik coughed. Ameera gasped. Baba. His eyes fluttered. The monitor beeped louder. Then his fingers curled round hers. She stood up quickly, tears rushing down her cheeks. He blinked slowly, then looked at her. His voice was raspy. You didn't let me go. Ameera nodded through sobs. He came back. He gave the smallest smile. I told you I would. And then, for the first time in weeks, Malik Okonkwo sat up. Alive, present, whole. The media exploded. He lives. Miracle Girl's voice wakes billionaire from second coma. Father-daughter, bond stronger than death. Sing to Heal Foundation. Launches after miracle recovery within weeks. The family court annulled the fraudulent will. The estate was fully restored. Ameera was granted permanent legal adoption, this time under the eyes of every camera in the nation. The judge's final words: this is not just an adoption. It is the recognition of two souls who saved each other. 1 year later, stood in front of a large glass building with a glowing sign, Sing to Heal Center Hope, through harmony inside. Trained vocal therapists worked with children, trauma survivors, and anyone struggling with grief or depression. They taught them to sing, not perfectly but honestly, to whisper pain, to shout joy, to hum through heartbreak. Ameera didn't just run the center. She was its beating heart. In the mansion, her room was no longer silent. It echoed with laughter, with soft songs, and the rustle of dreams. She kept the butterfly pin on her desk. Her favorite quote written above it: some wings don't flap, they sing. At 17, she became Nigeria's youngest certified music therapist. She toured schools, spoke at conferences. Her documentary Voice in the Dark was shortlisted for global awards. But no matter how far she went, she always came home to Mr. Malik, who now walked with strength again. You never left me, he would say, and she'd smile because you never let me go. 5 years later, a quiet garden ceremony. Ameera married Dr. Idris Bakari, a kind-hearted physician who had once treated her at Silvershore. Their twin girls, Halima and Zara, had matching butterfly clips in their hair. When the sun began to set that evening, Ameera took the mic and sang, not for the cameras, not for fame. But for the girl she once was, the street girl, the orphan. The voice no one noticed, and across the country, in homes, cars, and hospital beds, people played her voice. Because now, they didn't just call her a miracle, they called her a movement.